Thank you so much for your time. Danielle, it's lovely to meet you. It would be great if you can give us an introduction and overview to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Danielle. I'm head of marketing and investment and innovations, focusing on retail and consumer. So today's topic on brand engagement and AI is certainly something we've been talking a lot about.
So we're going to just jump straight into the questions and I'm going to kick it off. So the first one is, as generative AI becomes more adept at personalizing content, how should brands balance automation with maintaining an authentic brand voice and human touch?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's really about each focusing on their respective strengths. So I think you shouldn't be looking to AI to tackle the human touch elements and similarly the other way around. So for me, when I'm using AI tools, it's really thinking, okay, what could be more efficient to get an AI to work on? So thinking about data-driven tasks, how to optimize content delivery, how to analyze different behaviors, and then really making sure that the humans are focusing on the elements that are more focused on human intelligence and, of course, emotional intelligence. So it's really looking at how that works hand in hand with the artificial intelligence. So again, I think for either marketers or if you're working on brand strategy and things like that, it's really thinking of AI as a thinking buddy. So, and also, what are you feeding that buddy? What has it, external education been coming into that interaction? So, what you're feeding it, what you're training it, and then really filtering that through, I feel like is really important. So, a brand I feel like does this really well is Sephora. So, they use their AI for product recommendations, but essentially it is powered by their real life beauty advisors. So it's essentially then using the AI to scale that advice and then analyzing what have previous purchases been, how can they make that interaction more personal, but then really scaled to the max. So, and they've seen amazing, responses in terms of average order value, people coming in store, and really having that omni-channel experience. So it is all joined up and a better experience really all round.
Yeah, that's amazing. I completely agree. And you kind of touched into the next question, which would, how should brands differentiate themselves in an AI saturated content landscape?
Yeah, so I think, every brand is using AI, right? If you're in any category, I think it's really important to think, how will others be using it and how could you potentially get to the same idea? And I think that's something that can happen very easily, right? So differentiation really comes from creativity. And I think as the AI is getting better and better, it's, definitely going to be smarter than humans. And so it's thinking about, how do we get better at the questions that we're asking it and really using the insights and, what has gone into that brand identity or what has worked well in the past to get to that. So again, it's really about focusing on what is the AI better at and what should it be doing. So looking at efficiencies, but then that human touch is really about storytelling and how will that resonate with the customers that you're trying to reach out to. So it's storytelling, it's emotional connections, and I think really leaning into things that machines can't replicate. Putting that effort in at the start is really important. So I mentioned in the last question, it's really important to train your models well, but how are you pulling in transcripts from your specific focus groups or speaking to your customer service teams and, even if they are scaled up by AI, finding out what is resonating most. So when you couple that with innovative and, really human-centric campaigns, that is what can set a brand apart. And I think, again, always examples are helpful with this, but I think Nike's had a really interesting experience of pulling away from their brand messaging and just really doubling down on performance and just focusing on, here's the shoe, we're going to really focus on programmatic, stop wholesale agreements and things like that. And it's really exposed them to the likes of Hoka, On Running, really gaining on that market share. So I think, it comes back down to the basics and thinking, okay, if you are a shoe brand, what would be your differentiated message when everyone will be saying, here you can run faster or these are breathable? So how does the brand play into that?
Very nicely leads into that brands are now increasingly kind of relying on that AI landscape for customer engagement. Where do you think that the line should be drawn between that kind of automation and human oversight, but more so from the customer side? So how do you
Yeah.
maintain that positive customer experience?
Yeah, so I think for me, the line should really be drawn where empathy and really thinking about problem solving. So I think a machine will always get to, I guess, the obvious and, the quickest answer, right? But it doesn't take into account, if someone's missed a flight, for example, and they were meant to be at their sister's wedding, and how upsetting that would be. Or, I think that those really nuanced decision-making skills where they're required, and that for me is where the line is. So automation should definitely handle things like routine queries and tasks. And again, thinking about that kind of like buddy your way of working of, okay, what are the questions that you get asked 1,000 times a day that are very much, here's see this FAQ, or, kind of escalating to this point. And then so the human agents are really focused on high impact interactions that do require, a bit more of that human touch, I think is really important. But also I think in good customer segmentation, it's important to understand who wants that tech experience and who wants a more human touch. And I think it's been interesting working with some luxury brands that essentially they might say, okay, well, luxury is someone spending 20 minutes with a VIP customer consultant, right? And they might love that experience, but for another person, luxury is time. So they want to be able to come into a store, spend 5 minutes picking up a gift for their mother-in-law, and they're out in a few minutes in their lunch break and they can still go to prep for a sandwich. So, I think it's understanding in good customer segmentation who actually wants that AI-enabled experience, and making sure there's always an option to escalate to a human where needed. I think we've all been on customer calls where, you've just got a robot saying, do you want to go back to the main menu? And, you just feel very frustrated. So I think it's really important to plan in, who needs what, and not alienate any audiences. So again, in retail, which is a space, we obviously focus in using AI for customer service via chatbots, that works well. But we've also seen Air Canada comes to mind with their chatbot, who essentially invented a clause that didn't exist. And they essentially ended up having to pay out for that. So, I think the mistakes will be costly. And for any business looking at this, really ensuring regular reviews are in place and human-led adjustments are essentially they're crucial to maintain harmony, to test for biases, and ensure that at the end of the day, the customer is at the center of what you're doing.
Bit on that vein is, do you think that the reliance on AI and emerging tech to drive engagement, do you think that that would diminish returns over time? And then what steps can brands take to ensure that these technologies remain valuable and don't get in the way?
Yeah, so I think over reliance, I think is definitely a risk, and it can lead to diminishing returns if that human element that we've spoken about is lost. And I think also more importantly, if we get lazy and if we stop testing and we stop learning and we think, hey, I can do this job in 10 minutes and it used to take me 8 hours. So I think it's really important to think about what are you doing with that additional time? Yeah, obviously you're constantly innovating, you're adapting your use of AI, making sure it complements rather than replaces, human creativity and judgment. But with that free time, thinking about new product development, new services that you could be creating, I think exclusive activations for your VIP customers, thinking through your retention strategy. So AI might be really, lighting your acquisition up, but then what are you doing once you've gotten that customer? Personalization, all of those things. So I think it's important for marketers, for, I think all the companies Dragonfly AI are working with to think through, okay, what is the opportunity here to, again, it's always about putting the customer right in the center. And how are you unlocking more value and, for them and the company?
It wasn't a defined question, but one thing that I'm thinking of is how have you kind of found, or what are your thoughts on the last couple of years? I guess last year there was kind of a boom on clients using AI, and it was kind of coming from from top down. Do you think that that's still going to continue in a positive way, or do you think it's going to kind of update and change?
Yes, I think what was really interesting to see was certainly the pressure on boards to really say, okay, well, how are you using AI? How is it added, X to the bottom line? And I think what we saw were a lot of businesses claiming to use it, and it may have been other forms of automation or machine learning that isn't necessarily AI. So I think we'll definitely continue to see many more brands using it. I don't think that's going to go away, but I think we'll get away from, I think, gimmicks and some of that more headline grabbing, and I'm hoping we start to see a bit more depth, more case studies and interesting models that can come through. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's going away, and I'm excited to see how marketers continue to use it. I do think it is there are no new ideas anymore, right? That's a quote that's often said. But I think with these kind of tools, with more time, more access to resources, with ideas coming from different places, I'm excited to see where that could go.